those who joined live and all who are watching this in YouTube. As you know, today we are reading Peggy Mohan's book, Father's Tongue and Motherland. Today is the 6th chapter. Dr. Bama Muthuramalingam, who is the spirit behind the activities, who is coordinating a lot of this book study groups activities, is talking about leading the discussion and talking about chapter 6, Dravidian Dream Time. And in Tamil, they say, find the truth. Thirukurala, எப்பொருள் யார் யார்வாய் கேட்பினும் அப்பொருள் மெய்ப்பொருள் காண்பதறிவு, எப்பொருள் எத்தன்மை தாயினும் அப்பொருள் மெய்ப்பொருள் காண்பதறிவு. அதாவது seek the truth, no matter what you hear from anybody. It's very important for you to find the truth, and that is the true wisdom. That's what we are trying to do as much as possible. So today's talk is going to be very interesting and thought-provoking. And once again, I welcome you all of you.
Can you please unmute yourself? It's my greatest pleasure to introduce our speaker, reviewer of Chapter 6 this evening, that is Dr. Bama Muthuramalingam. And Bama's journey of academic excellence and cultural passion was born in vibrant city of Madurai, and which is renowned for its rich heritage and history and cultural heritage. And she completed a school education at Capron Hall Girls Higher Secondary School in Madurai, where her foundation in academics was laid. And then, driven by her passion for engineering, she pursued both her undergraduate and postgraduate studies at Tyagaraja College of Engineering, also in Madurai, excelling in her field. Her quest for knowledge led her to the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology in Madras, IIT Madras, where she undertook doctoral research in wireless communications within the Department of Electrical Engineering. And since 2011, Bama has made significant contributions to the field of semiconductors and is currently employed at Qualcomm, an esteemed American tech company based in Chennai. And இது வந்து பாமாவோட வாழ்வாதாரம். இப்ப பாமாவின் தமிழ் ஆதாரத்தை பத்தி நம்ம படிக்கிறதா ரொம்ப சிறப்புன்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். Bama's interests extend beyond engineering. She has always nurtured a deep love for Tamil language, literature, and history. This passion blossomed further during the COVID-19 pandemic, prompting her to engage actively in volunteer work with organizations dedicated to conserving Tamil literature, heritage, and history. Her enthusiasm for exploration drives her to frequently travel to historical sites throughout Tamil Nadu and across India, enriching her understanding of the cultural tapestry that shapes her identity as a Tamilian. And more so, for all of us in the JOC study group, we know Bama as the kingpin behind all the activities that happens, from coordination to messaging and to keeping us active. Bama's there. Thank you so much, Bama. And Subhadra for the lovely introduction. And let me share my screen. Is it visible to everyone? Yes, it is very much visible. Thank you everyone for being here. So we have started this book 1 month back. Now we have completed 6 sessions. We are in the 7th, we have completed 5 sessions. We are in the 6th session today. And it means we have completed 3/4 of the book.
So this book had given us a lot of information, lot of methods to understand a language and how a language evolves over time, and what are the influences a language can have, and how it shapes the language further. So this is all we have seen over the last 5 sessions. We have seen about the Indo-Aryan languages, and then we had seen about the birth of Dakkini, which is spoken in the Deccan region, primarily in Hyderabad. And the third chapter was devoted to the most important linguistic feature called the ergavity, which is present in most of the Indo-Aryan languages. And then for fourth chapter it was about the languages in the Indus Valley civilization. And then the fifth chapter was the very elaborate chapter, which was about the Munda language and Bhojpuri languages. So now we are into the languages spoken in the south of Asia, Southern Asia or India, the Dravidian ringtone. So let me get started. Okay, so here is my outline. So I have simply followed the way Dr. Peggy has organized her sections. So I started with what is Dravidian and what are the Dravidian languages, and also talk about what is the second migration in India, and what are the migrations by the IVC people, and how it has shaped the language, and how Maharashtra how it has shaped the language in South India, and how Maharashtra remains a twilight zone. And then she goes about the archaeometallurgical connections of the IVC people and the South people. So we spend some time on that. And then she emphasized on the difference between the main Dravidian languages and the tribal Dravidian languages. Let's see what it is. And then finally, I conclude this particular presentation. So as we hear the name Dravidian languages, we all speak Dravidian languages. Most of us have the mother tongue as the Dravidian languages. But in the linguistic world, this is the multimodal network of the Dravidian language family. Most of us are very well aware of it. The Proto-Dravidian language is classified as Central Dravidian, Southern Dravidian, and Northern Dravidian. Southern Dravidian is very much associated with us, namely the Tamil and the Kannada, and further like the Toda, Kota, Malayalam, Irula, and then the Kodagu, Kannada, Tulu kind of languages. And Central is related with Telugu and all the Deccan languages spoken in the Deccan region, Gondi, Manda, Kui, spoken in Orissa, languages like that. And in the northern languages, which we briefly touched upon in the last presentation, was this Malto language, Kuruk language, and then the Brahmi language. So this is all we know as the Dravidian language family. And if we want to geographically associate this language distribution, this picture is there in all of our mind so well that almost all of the North India and the Central India speak Indo-Aryan languages, whereas this blue shade is the Dravidian languages. And it is not only spoken in southern India, it is also spoken in some part of central India, namely in the Orissa and the Chhattisgarh region, as well as in the northwest of Pakistan, which is the Balochistan region. The Brahmi is spoken over there. So this is the identity. This is the distribution of the languages we have seen over many years, and we can associate with this picture very well. So what Peggy has to tell about this language is, that means, no reason. Okay. So what Peggy has to tell about this language, let's start with what Peggy is telling us. So she starts with this etymology of what is Dravidian or how it is has come about. She quotes the first use of Dravidian is in Skanda Purana, which is written in first millennium CE. And this is the first mention, and Madhav Deshpande, who a renowned linguistic scholar, quotes the following: whatever is V in the Va or V in the northern languages or the Sanskrit turns out as M in Ma in the Tamil language, as well as this D Da turns out as L in this one. So we can associate like Ramalan for this example. So similarly, this Dravidian, which was quoted in some Skanda Purana is changing as Dramila, which we are aware of it so often. And then she also quotes that it is there in this word Dravidya is quoted in Dharma Shastra as well as in Pali scripts. The Damila is also written in like no reference to Damila is written in Pali scripts as well. So this is what the etymology is all about. And then she also quotes it's not in the early part of Rig Veda, but then Britishers has adapted it so much to divide the North and the South Indian people. So because their languages are quite different, so Britishers have adapted Dravidian to call all the South Indian people, and that's what stay in our present day usage as well. Most of the South Indians are called Dravidians. So this is a terminology given by the Britishers. How this Dravidian has come, where did they come from? This question would linger in our mind. So Peggy asked that question next, and she goes about the migration theory to explain that. So we all are well aware that there are many migrations that has happened in India. And the first major migration is the out of Africa people coming to India 70,000 years ago. And the second major migration that has happened during like last 10,000 years. So this has been the Iranian farmers from the Zagros mountain coming all the way to India. So they have come all the way in the Arabian region and then the Afghanistan, Kazakhstan region and further to the Indus Valley regions. So this is what the second migration has been there. And this migration was not stopping anywhere within the Indus Valley region, which is mostly the northwest of India. It has also been there down south. So we'll see later, we'll see examples how it was happening, how it happened. And also this migrations was mostly dominated by men. What it means that the people who came from Zagros mountain are all farmers, and they are all mostly men who had come into the Indus Valley region and further into the south of India. So this is the major migration it has happened. And in the last session itself, we had this question like why it was always the male dominated migration. So it could be like male and female could have come together, and we had briefly discussed why can't it be both? Why it was not happening? So she gives the following explanation, which which we see whether it is convincing or not, but the explanation goes like this. In most of the animal herds, right? So she gives this gazelle as the example, where you can see whenever there is a group of female, there is only one alpha gazelle or the deed that is together with the woman or the female gazelle population, whereas with the men, whereas with the men population are mostly like this was like a bachelor's herd. So it is all the bachelor gazelles moving together. This we can associate with this alpha one even with our goats, Indian goats. Like in our childhood, we have seen it in villages as well. So the shepherd would have many sheep, but female sheep. Whereas for the male would be only one keda would be the part of the crow, because if there is more than one keda, it would fight among each other and that would result in a disobedience. So always the shepherd maintains only one keda among his goat, among his herd. This is what we can relate it. So this alpha man is something very unique. So one of the alpha men, one man tends to be an alpha man all the time. And even in this gazelle animal community, it so happens like that. So this one, we have to relate whether that is the same within the human population as well. So she quotes this following examples where there is a tribal folklore kind of thing. So where the younger sons of the nobles in Europe don't stay within the kingdom because the first son is the legal heir. So they stay within the kingdom and the younger ones has to move out of their kingdom and find out their own places. So she thinks that whether the Britishers who came and did colonization, not only the Britishers or the European men, they had done a lot of colonization, right, over the last 400 years. So this could be their this would be attributed to their folklore. That's one example she quotes. And then she also quotes an Indian example where the Nambudiri Brahmins, in the Nambudiri Brahmins, the first son gets to live in the house what the father has built. whereas the other ones has to come out of the house and find their own bread and butter. So it was like they have to make their own family. So it is there within the human population, Homo sapiens as well. But we indeed ask this question: how can they leave their mothers or wives or sisters or daughters when they move from one place to other? So if it was this legal hire kind of thing, then they will make, like, they will come out and make their own thing. But this could also be out of prosperity. There was so much, like, the IBC region was so much prosperous, and so this IBC young man was in an exploration mindset. So they would have moved out and created all these migrations in the south. And also the Sagro farmers, if you ask this question, why should they travel thousands of kilometers all the way from Iran to India? So if we ask this question, because they were the first, they were the early ones to do the farming, right? So they wanted more room to do their farming. So they would have eventually ventured out of their own place and found out find places wherever available. So this is the thing. She is giving idea about the male-dominated migrations. So further, she asks the genetic results, how the second migration was like, and what is the classification in within the Indian geography. So as we had seen, Muttarsanaya had talked about this paper many times in our group. So I am just doing a recap of what it is. So this one is like, it talks about what are the predominant groups which had indulged in many migrations. So one is obviously the Iranian farmers, and then the East Siberian hunter-gatherers and the South Asian hunter-gatherers, and then the Western European hunter-gatherers and the Eastern European hunter-gatherers. So there are many communities as well, and they were moving here and there. So we are interested in the IVC region, or the region in the India. So you see that the Zagros people, when they came to India, this Indus peripheric line was formed. And this color coding might not be very visible to you, but let me explain it. What this dark color, dark orange color indicates is there is a good amount of Iranian penetration, Iranian farmers penetration over here. And there is a purple or violet color which is associated with the hunter-gatherers of the early Indians, like the first Indians who came here. And there is a like green kind of thing, which is the West Asian hunter-gatherers, Siberian hunter-gatherers. So this Indus periphery is formed by multiple people, and it is predominantly by the South Asian hunter-gatherers, which are the first Indians, and by the Iranian farmers. So this is what the Indus periphery land looked like, the genetic composition of it. So this composition is there. And we have several terminologies to call them, like there are different names within the Indian population to classify what are the genetic differences. So we had heard this terms AASI, ANI, ASI, which stands for in ancient ancestral South Indian, ancestral North Indian, ancestral South Indian. So these are the kind of terms, like large group of categories which are like, if we want to classify any Indian's genetic result, these are the large categories for which we fit in. So this particular one, the ASI, which is formed by the Iranian farmers and the first Indians. So this is the cline, the Indus Valley cline that is present in the Indus Valley region. So this ASI cline is ASI people is otherwise called the Dravidian people. And this Dravidian people, when they came in contact with each other, that is the Iranian farmers, when they came in contact with the first Indians, they had, of course, they have their own mixing, right? The admixture happens. So because of this admixture, not only new genetic mutations have happened, new languages have also been formed. Because this AASI, the ancestral ancient South Indian, they might be speaking some other substrate language. And whereas this Zagros people, as we understand from the literature and previous works, they were mostly speaking the Elamite language. So, and this first Indians had some substrate language. So they had mixed together, and that has formed as a new language. And that language is what we are, like, the language was first formed here, and then it had migrated to the south, but the people are called the Dravidian people. The ASI people are nothing but the Dravidian people, and the language spoken by them are called the Dravidian language. So she is setting the context like this and tries to see when they migrated to south, did they migrate to south? If they had migrated to south, what is the language impact and how it has shaped into the present day languages? So let's see that. So we can also ask this question is like this the particular farming is something has resulted the Iranian farmers have got very good skills in making agricultural yields better and better. So that means we can move to a sedentary lifestyle. So is that what all of the men are doing in over the world, like over in different geography of the world? So, or the hunter-gatherers are all primitives. So we can she's asking this question. So she also quotes that examples like saying that she quotes several examples. Some of them are here. So the Ratnagiri petroglyphs, which is there in Maharashtra, this is for having like several petroglyphs. So this is on the rocks and several animals are drawn over here. So this is about 11,000 years ago, which is much earlier than the Iranian farmers entry or migration. And similarly, the other part of the world, the one in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. So this was built about 9,000 BC, like in about 9,000 BC. I might be wrong in the timelines, but this is much earlier than the Iranian farmers have invented agriculture. So as well as the Stonehenge. So all these people were doing some monumental work, but then they might not be interested in doing farming because they might be getting the wild rice or the wild cereals and several animals by hunting. So that was sufficient for their food. So they were not really going behind the farming, but they were in their own ways. They were doing something or the other and creating monuments, which stand as a masterpiece even today. So this is how the hunter-gatherers are there. So then why would there are a group of IVC people. They are living happily. They were doing agriculture. They were doing lots of metal work. They were doing trade. They were doing lots of things, and within their within their geography, they are very happy people. But why would they move? So as obvious, the young man always has this curiosity or the exploration. It is not only the young man to me, but she quotes this young man. They are always intended to explore. So they might have moved from this IVC geography all the way to the south. So this would be the likely route that would have been taken. Even when we studied the Tony Joseph's book, we had talked about this migration as well, because we had some evidences in those books to highlight it. So she is also quoting the same migrations of what has happened. But why would they do? Why would they move? Is one is their curiosity. Apart from that, they were well versed in farming and they were well versed in metal work. So they might have been interested in expanding their trades and move to different parts of the region wherever possible. So they would have migrated most likely in this direction, taking their farming and metal work to the other geographies. Of course, today, in the olden days as well, these would have been like most favored men because they have a lively they have skill which earns their livelihood. So they would have been preferred, and the local geography people would have engaged them with them very well. But then the language, because migration then next leads to the language change. So how did they manage to talk? For any trade, for any thing, we need a communication, right? Without communication, you cannot trade, you cannot do anything in a new geography. So if you remain incomprehensible, then you are not entertained in that region. So you have to know what is that spoken in that region, and then you pick it with your language and try to do that. So she quotes that the pidgin-like of language would have emerged in their early migration, which is like only they would have taken certain nouns only for the trade. And over time, they might have end up living over there. So in that case, the vocabulary has to be picked Whether the grammar changed or not is another question. Like in the early migration, it would have been only the nouns and vocabulary, which is the pidgin kind of language model that would have evolved, and that would have been the first language of the early men who had migrated from the Indus Valley civilization. So since they moved with a better tool and like better farming methods and metal work, they would have that would have resulted in food production, sedentary life, and it would have evolved to multiple tools and technologies, because these people over here are also smart people. So they would have combined and resulted in a very better livelihood. So as they move, like we all know that the southern end of the Indus Valley civilization is nothing but the Daimabad side. So she sees of as they move towards the south, like we know till the Maratha or Maharashtra region, it is all the Indus Valley civilization. So as they move, what has happened, whether how is the language changing? So she is quoting Solapur as the example. Solapur, many of us would be knowing for many other reasons, but the Solapur is in the southern part of Maharashtra. So this is kind of a divide between the northern and the southern regions, and the language over here, she closely studies what is happening to the language in this one. She sees a different pattern in the way the languages are spoken. So as Subhadra and Sridevi had iterated in the previous sessions, ergativity is something very powerful one for the Indo-Aryan languages. So the standard Marathi, which is taught in school or in the northern part of Maharashtra, has this ergativity. Whereas in the Solapur Marathi or the southern Marathi does not have this does not have ergativity, so it is called non-ergative. So she quotes this following example, like like the ne structure is what is associated with the ergativity. If you recollect what Sridevi and Subhadra as well as Maniaya had highlighted. So with the subject by me, it would stand with that, and the ne word is what is there is a marker with the subject, and that forms the ergativity in the language. So the standard Marathi saying that I ate mirchi. This is what is written here. So I am not sure whether it is I or the he. This is the ne structure, or that Michi Kali is what is, this is how it is spoken in the standard Marathi, whereas in Sholapur dialect, it was like to Michi Kalo. So this is like someone ate Michi. So this is like avan mulai sapitan. This is how we also speak, right? So this is what is there in the Solapur dialect, which has no ergativity. And in the standard Marathi, there is another example. He has the book. He reads the book. So that is what is written over here. Taine pustak vachele. So this is what is in the standard Marathi, where the ne word sticks to the subject, and that is what is forming the ergativity. Whereas in the Solapur dialect, to pustak vachal, ti pustak vachali. So he read the book, she read the book. So this is what is there, and this is like avan pustakam vasitan, aval noolai vasital. So this is how we speak in our language as well. So this is non-ergative because we don't associate any ne word with the subject. So this is the classification she brings out in the linguistic type of things. The migrations have happened, but whether it has changed the language, she starts seeing right from Solapur Marathi, the Solapur region, that the language has changed, and this is one example. Another thing, like if we recollect what were the distinct features, linguistic features which differentiate a language, one of the predominant one next to ergativity is the grammatical gender, because the grammatical gender is not there in any of the South Indian languages, but it is all present in the Indo-Aryan languages as well as in the Munda languages. So this one is, she quotes the following example, like this is in Tamil. So, avan சாப்பிடுகிறான், அவள் சாப்பிடுகிறாள், அது சாப்பிடுகிறது. So this is the three genders we have, but these are natural genders. Anpal, Penpal, Palarpal. So this is what we have it in Tamil. Whereas in Marathi or in Hindi or in Sanskrit, you remember, like we associate even for train or other things, non-living things also, we have gender, as well as verbs also have gender. So this one is the grammatical gender is there in Marathi language, which is the southern end of the IVC language, whereas Tamil does not have it, or the languages post the Solapur boundary does not have it. So this is the twilight zone she is highlighting. And also there is a double ending ergativity, which is like this we have seen in the earlier presentation as well. So there is a double ending ergativity or split ergativity. This is seen in many Indo-Aryan languages as well as Bushashki, Andamanese and Munda languages. So double marking here means that both the subject as well as the object takes the ne kind of thing. So buy me food eaten is how they write in their language, whereas I ate the food. If you want to write, I ate the food. The like Ramne, we saw some examples. Ramne fal kaungi, so kind of things. So those are kind of ergativity. Let's not get into those examples because we have spent a lot of time in the earlier sessions. But what is more important is it is not present in any Dravidian languages. This ergativity, whether it is split ergativity or double marking ergativity, nothing is present in the Dravidian languages. So now we have to see whether it is all the only Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, we have seen that the languages has started changing. But is it that she further asked the question, was it the only migration that has happened, or it has been multiple migrations? If there has been multiple migrations, how would have looked like? So we have the genetic results so far. We have the results from many genetic results which we had covered in our earlier sessions. So we see a good bulk of IVC haplogroups in the southern regions. So, but then we don't know when that migration has happened. We know the genetic results of the IVC people as well as the South Indian people have some lineage. But then when it is when has that migration happened? We don't have genetic evidence to talk about it. But she is making kind of postulations to see how it would have happened. So she quotes the following example. First migrations would have been with men, and later did they move with families. So if they had moved with families, what would have happened? So if, she quotes the following hypothesis. Like if they had find a group of Dravidian men who would have moved from the north, that is the extended IVC region, to the south. When they moved, they would have moved to study how the region looks like, whether it is safe, kind of thing. Like it's just an exploration, right? So they would have studied the geography and the people of the south, and then they would have moved, and then later they brought their families. So this is more like the Trinad kind of migration. If we recollect what was there in chapter 1, first it was only men only migration, and then women and men came together, and that formed the Karol language. So this similar kind of migration would have happened. So it could be both men and women traveling together. So in linguistic terms, they call this as the founder effect. First, some set of people, they migrate to see what is the region look like, how the people are there, and whether it is suitable for migration. So if they find it suitable for migration, they set the first set of people who migrated, they set the tone of the language, because there is a new hybrid language that is evolving. The tone of the hybrid language is set by the first people who move, and then they leave their stamps, and then they further get their own people. So she is also talking about the urban migration, which has also happened. Like we know this urban migration very well from Balakrishna Iyer's talk, because he often talks about the Velian migration. So this Velian migration and the word Aryapadai Kadanda Nedunjaliyan. So this Aryam word and the Velis migration, this would have been an urban migration. But this urban migration, since it is an urban migration, means they move with they will move with their own family for a different reason. Probably because of trade, or the trade slowed down there and they want to move to a newer region. So when they did this urban migration, they would have carried all their memories. Like even all of us can relate to it. Wherever we are, we still connect out to our native town or near hometown over here, wherever we live, we relate to our hometown. So this kind of memories we carry all the time. So this is what she is talking as the other type of migrations could have been the urban migrations. So for this, for some reasons, she has not quoted neither Balakrishna Ayya's work or Mahadevan Ayya's work. Rather, she is quoting the Learn Sangam by Tamil by Devika. So, for some reason, sorry. Naindara was a doubt. Was there a doubt? Naindara, can you please go on mute? Thank you. Okay. So next she talks about the work by Professor Sarada Srinivasan of NIAS, National Institute of Advanced Studies. So her work predominantly, she has been in touch with the research work carried out by um, Professor Sharada. So she is Sharada's work is primarily on the metallurgy field. So wherever excavations happen, wherever metals are found, she has made significant contributions. So one of the contributions in the earlier thing has come out to be this Nilgiris connection with the IVC. Because this Nilgiri population, this Gudalur people, they they are the Kurumba people. The Kurumba people still have this. They they dig a soil to find out whether gold is available, and they do search it. They can find out whether gold is available or not. And after this, they are find they have. It has been so found that the beads used to be like the micro beads, which has been found in the Harappan site. And in Harappan site is also found there in Nilgiris in the air Kaltittai. The Kayan circles had this small beads, which is now in the British Museum. So there is a connection between the IBC people and the South people in terms of metallurgy as well. Of course, the dating is something we have to be careful about. So this dating, if I remember it correctly, this was about first century BC. But there is a archaeological metallurgical link that is existing between the IVC people and the South people. And some reason my slides are going in a different direction. So there are other evidences also quoted by Professor Sharada. So she also quotes this Mailanam results, which we are very well aware of the recent announcement by. So Mailadambara is a older one. So we know that their rating goes back to 2172, which is using the iron 4,000 years ago, 4,500 years ago. So this was the one, and also they had some relations like the way it was produced in Mailadambara, the technology. She finds a technology connection between the IVC people and the South people. And similarly, Sivagalai steel as well as the iron smelting in Bastar region, which is there in Chhattisgarh, they also have, they are the tribal people, but their technology is closely associated with what IVC people had. So Professor Sharada was able to connect the potential connection between the IVC people and the Tamil civilization. So this continues to be active. But what interestingly they had also found is the language, because in this particular forum we are interested in language. So this language, whatever Professor Sharada has found the following relations. So she found some words are similar in Sindhi and Tamil as well as Brahmin. So this one, this is a musical vessel. So they calling it as Volavettu. So this Talavettu or Volavettu, this one is there in the Chola inscription, as well as there is a, if we see this word, this Vattu is there in Sindhi as well. And in Brahavi, they call it differently, Vattu. So this is still preserved in the Kamalar community, which is the tribal community in Tamil Nadu. So these words have existed in Old Tamil. Then they must, if words like this kind of things existed in Old Tamil, they might have some similar relations in the IBC one. So this is one example from the metallurgical field. She tries to identify whether that can be a linguistic connection. And in their discussions, they have found out, and then later they have confirmed that this word in spoken, like the similar words for a musical vessel, is same in Sindhi, Tamil as well as Brahmi. So she makes this connection. So with this, she moves to the next topic. So far we have seen that migration, how the migrations have happened, and then what is the metallurgical link. Now she asked this question. There are many there are many Dravidian languages. Why some of them are called mainstream Dravidian languages and some of them are called tribal Dravidian languages? We know all of this wherever it is shaded. The dark gray region is the mainstream Dravidian language, whereas the light shades are the mainstream ones, whereas the dark shades are the tribal languages. So why is that happening? Like she is asking this question: what is the difference between mainstream and tribal? So is there any specific difference, or just that people who are still tribes, they are continuing to talk, so that is called the tribal language? So she takes Gondi language as one tribal language as an example. This is a Dravidian language, but she is spending little more time to understand whether it is like the tribal language is simply because of the geography, or is it anything to do with that? So from the linguistic cultural, like there are some encyclopedia she is quoting. From there she gets the following information. So this is the present geography of the Gondwana region. So whatever is highlighted in this different colors, right? The legends are for the percentage of the Gond people living over here. They are in upper part of Telangana, Orissa, as well as in Chhattisgarh and part of Madhya Pradesh. So this is the distribution, geographical distribution. So over here, these people, when did they move over here, or for is there any other reason that they have moved over here? And why did they move to very thick forest? They are not it's not a shallow forest or a easy forest. This is also this is a very thick forest. So this one is like mostly the Gondwana regions are all hilly terrains. And what this cultural, from the cultural encyclopedia, what she found out it, these people have moved around 11th to 13th century CE. So that means this is a recent migration or recent movement. And these people, if you take any Gondwana people, based on the geography or based on the state they live, they have their own, like they are either bilingual or trilingual. They speak their own Gondi language. Along with that, they speak multiple other languages, like if they are in Telangana region, they speak Telugu. If they are in Orissa region, they speak Odissi. So similarly, you have you have them being bilingual or trilingual, and most of them are very well educated. That is also we are aware of it. But what she is hypothesizing is, did they abandon their language or not? Like probably they abandoned their earlier language and they are speaking Gondi as their new language. But this Gondi language, even if they had abandoned and created a new language, this has close relation to Telugu and Tamil. The vocabularies and the way like all the Dravidian languages, we have this subject, object, verb, right? So the syntax is also very close to what Tamil and Telugu are. So this is what is about the Gondwana people or the Gondi tribe. But since this kind of thing has happened, she always has a habit of relating her own travel with this one, because she is all about the evolutionary linguist, right? So she talks about what has happened in Zanzibar. So there is Zanzibar is in Eastern Africa. There is a language called Swahili language. So this language is spoken by the Arabs have traded with the Africans, namely Zanzibar. And then, like, since when the Arab men moved over there, they made their own family, and obviously the pidgin kind of languages had evolved over there. But because of some consolation, the Africans have also has also converted as Muslims. But then the slavery which is there in the Zanzibar region is very much related to what ethnicity you are, rather than what language you are speaking. So what she is highlighting over here is probably there could have been some slavery which has resulted in this movement, and they moved to like the Gondi people who had moved to a dense forest, and the language would have evolved that. But she's only hypothesizing this, but no concrete evidence is given over here. So this is just a hypothesis. But on the Gondi language, she tries to see whether that Gondi language has any connections with the other Dravidian languages. So she starts with the retroflex. So we all know this retroflex is very much Indian, and all the retroflex, the Tamil has the larger number of retroflex. So here the retroflex that is present in the Gondi language is the Ra variation or variation. And like Gondi people, like other the Dravidian languages, they also follow the natural genders, not the grammatical genders, the natural genders. But then Tamil and Malayalam has three genders. As we discussed earlier, it is Anpal, Penpal, Palarpal. Whereas in Gondi language, it is and Telugu language, it is only two. So either he and others, masculine and others. So that is the one that is spoken in like their language construct has only those. So she is giving examples like I saw a peacock, Nane Maludun, Sudan. I couldn't pronounce it correctly, but you can see here for she saw a peacock, she is using adu, similar to adu, she is having some add. So mile is similar, like instead of mile, they are calling it as mall. So non-mile parthen, which is like Nana Maludan Sudan. So this is my pronunciation is wrong, sorry for that. But this construct, you can see it's like subject, object, and then verb. So this is how the Gondi language looks, and it has very close connections with the Tamil and the Telugu or any other Dravidian language because the syntax is very close. As well as their number system, if you see the number system, like we have it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that, right? So similarly, they also have undi, rand, mund, nang, and then for 4, 5, they have similar words. 5, 6, they have similar numbers. But if you she is highlighting on this nang, which is the 4. So nalang. So what she is trying to highlight here is the la part is very like we have been telling Tamil and Malayalam only has it, but this also has that specific tone. So this is that means Gondi language is more similar to Tamil is what she is arguing or she is trying to establish here. So with this, she comes to the final remarks. So we have seen that Gondi language is a tribal language, but it has more similarities with the Tamil, be it the gender form or be it the syntax form and the retroflex forms. So she makes this observation like, since Gondi language has evolved, has changed over time, that there was some necessity which has made the language to change. So that could happen even for Tamil. So we cannot be like, that's why she is telling, let me read out the following. Just as Gondi has been open to new influences over the ages, so has Tamil, which is why linguistics are very cautious about calling any language the oldest. Okay. And this is one of the statements made by her. And Sridevi and me were talking about whether the language will be there forever in the last week. So she also addresses that point. To be alive is to be adaptive whenever the need arises. Only the dead cease to change and have to be preserved. So this has been the thing. And she is also talking about the agglutinative form, which is very specific to the Dravidian languages, and in fact the agglutination in Tamil is very, very much there. And with this, let me summarize. So this Dravidian time chapter is talking about the migrations of the Dravidian people and when they migrated, what has happened to the language. So we have seen it from the linguistic perspective as well as from the metallurgical perspective as well. So the languages has been, there has been common connections and the language has transformed. So the substrate language, that is the first Indians language, has changed much, and the new Dravidian language has been established. And she is also emphasizing on the mainland versus the tribal language. With this, I'm concluding my presentation. I am happy to take questions.
Thank you, Bama. That was a dense lecture. It's a lot of information. Let's open the platform for questions.
You have done a very good job in putting subtitles to her paragraphs. That was the biggest challenge that I had. Because like I said in the previous chapter too, she jumps between topic to topic and there is no cohesiveness other than the Dravidian factor. So you have eliminated that or delineated them very well. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody else?
Just a comment. I don't know if she got that gender thing correctly on this chapter. In Tamil, it's actually tiered in two. So we have Uyardinai and Akrinai, and within that we have Anpal, Panpal, Palarpal, Palavinpal. So it goes on further. So what she has here in comparison to the other languages, I don't know if it is exactly right. So maybe we need to take that with a grain of salt, is just my comment.
Compared to the previous chapter, right? Here, the treatment of the language, the linguistic arguments are not so dense. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, the migrations part was more stressed rather than the linguistic things. So that is what I see it in this chapter.
My understanding is she takes the grammatical gender as every object, whether living or non-living, has a gender in the Indo-Aryan languages. While in Tamil, only the living things have a gender. Non-living things have a so-called the neutral gender, right? In that sense. But not the singular plural part, but simply the nature of the gender. And I think that's the term she uses. Grammatical gender means that
Yeah, she has been used.
every noun has a gender.
And she emphasized that, like when she emphasizes grammatical gender, she's highlighting the ones which the verbs also take. So verbs and non-living things.
And adjectives as well
Adjectives.
go through changes.
I have one, input. I've been doing this through Gondi decipherment by Gangali that I have been I'm involved. He says the Indus people were the Gondi people. That is one input. And the wheel sign is their community sign, logo. So, of course, I don't know whether the author had covered this aspect, but maybe later part I could expect some reference to that.
The author is
Shall
not.
I repeat? Shall
Yeah,
I?
I am like it's
You
clear
got,
right
huh?
now.
Okay.
So yeah, because I have also seen the work by the Gondi, like Gondi people.
I was also in Chhattisgarh for 2 years on NTPC project site, thermal power plant site. It's a very interesting, very healthy environment. Particularly, I have lived in in Mesopotamia. In Iraq also, I had lived for 2 years on an irrigation project. Both the sites I have lived, the sense one on Sumerian site and another this Gondi site. Very interesting, and they were natural loving people. So that slavery, I don't know whether there were pressures on the outer, so they had climbed up.
Yeah. What pressure is not detailed, but there has been some kind of pressure that was built, and that's why they moved. Even if I remember the work by Professor Bhakta Vishal Bharati, he also tells not all tribals lived in the dense forest right from their forefather days because of some
And we also have Irula family friends. So we used to go for hunting, especially cheetah and deer and rabbit. So we used to till I was a boy, up to 60, 65, we used to have hunted deer and monthly ones, weekly ones, like that. So we had Irula, and they used to be very guiding us to go for hunting. So with these inputs, And we used to climb. We used to climb the mountain also, mountain ranges, forest, thick forest. If you go into the thick forest, you will see it's very thin, not that thick. If you are used to the forest will not be that thick. Even our we also had some experience on the Nilgiri mountains. During our surveys, we used to go through the mountains and the forest ranges.
Let me interject. Please, let's keep the discussion to the topic.
Yeah, that's all. See, what I mean to say is the tribal connection, how they have been located on mountain is an issue. Still, it's required to be thought about. That's the main point, my main input I want to give. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just to add on, she's not talking about the Gondi people, and because Gondi people, there are several research works saying that the Gondi tribes are nothing but the IVC people. And even the scripts are also the Gondi scripts. So there are people working on that, but Peggy is not making any connections or reference to them. Thank you.
Other comments? Of course, when she wrote this book, it is a couple of years old. Many of you may know just in the last 2 weeks, new information has come from excavation near Tiruvannamalai area, and the other one is Chennur, I think, where there are connections, trade connections with IVC, dating to, if I remember right, one being 2100 BCE, which is 4,200 years old, and the other one was 1500 BCE, that is Tiruvannamalai area. The key information I wanted to share with you, which adds on to this, is that we have found a lot of graffiti symbols at many that Professor Rajan has found, and of course more so in Kiradi. They all have been dated approximately 500 or 600 BCE. But the one found at Tiruvannamalai area has now been dated as 1500 BCE. And of course, Professor Rajan has made compiled the graffiti marks and similarity of graffiti marks with certain Indus seals. So there is some written version connectivity, not necessarily language, but certainly some kind of a written connectivity. Because there was one of the slides Bama had was about connection to IVC, so I thought I'll bring that up.
Ilanamandi one is 1700 BC. And Mailadambare, she is quoting Mailadambare, but because that was done earlier, she was quoting that, but not the recent results. But also, not only the graffiti marks, we also found the carnelian beings were there in the sarcophagus.
Right.
So,
there was an IVC trade, right?
IVC trade. Both in Mailadambare as well as in Ilanamandi, they have found the carnelians.
The more recent dating of Iron Age is 3200 BC, and of course she cites 22 or 2300 BC. So that data came out only this year.
Excuse me, Bama, one question. தமிழ்ல வந்து 1 2 3க்கு பதிலா க அந்த காலத்துல எழுதுவாங்க இல்லையா க உ அந்த மாதிரி இல்லையா அந்த மாதிரி வேற எந்த மொழியிலயாவது இப்ப இருக்கிற நம்பருக்கும் பழைய காலத்து நம்பருக்கும் வித்தியாசம் இருக்கான்னு தெரியல.
எனக்கு தெரியலங்க, வேற யாருக்காவது தெரிஞ்சா சொல்லுங்க. மணி ஐயா. I know.
That's going very deep into the subject. ரொம்ப நல்ல presentation, Bama.
அந்த தமிழ் எண்கள் வந்து உண்மையில கிரந்த எண்களுக்கும் தமிழுக்கும் பொதுவானவை. அது வந்து பல்லவர் காலத்துல தான் அந்த எண்கள் வந்திருக்கணும். அதுக்கு முன்னாடி என்ன எண்கள் இருந்ததுன்னு நமக்கு கல்வெட்டுகள்ல சான்றுகள் இல்லை.
ஆனா மத்த மொழிகள்ல ஏதாவது மொழிகள்ல அவங்களோட எழுத்துக்கள் இருந்தது. டாட் சிஸ்டம், டாட் டேஷ் சிஸ்டம்
தேவநாகரியில வந்து அவங்களுடைய எண்கள் எழுத்துக்கள் போல இருக்கிற மாதிரி எனக்கு தெரியல. ஆனா எனக்கு தேவனாரி அவ்வளவு தெரியாது. ஆனா அரபு எண்கள் அநேகமா தேவநாகரியில இருந்து தான் எடுத்துட்டு இருப்பாங்க. ஆனா நம்ம வந்து தமிழ்ல இருந்து தான் அது எடுத்துக்கிட்டதா நமக்கு நிறைய பார்க்குறோம் சோஷியல் மீடியால. அது உண்மையாக இருக்கும் வாய்ப்பு குறைவு.
இன்னொன்னு
That's a
வந்து
good question.
இவங்க வந்து I just want to add a comment. Because Geeta is also talking.
Yeah.
She dropped off, I think, so it doesn't matter. So இது வந்து நம்ம when we like there has been also Proto-Elamite and Proto-Dravidian has some things. But all over the book, Peggy restricts herself to the Indian subcontinent. So she is not associating with the languages outside of India. But then that could also have relations because the migrations have been there all over the place. So their language, even IVC, when we think of it, the Iranian farmers or the farmers from Zagro Mountains have mixed with the first Indians. So that would have been like, is it straight away Dravidian, or there was been a say, intermediate language that was formed and later that developed as a Dravidian language? That is something something there in my mind. And also the Dravidian language has been formed in the IVC region, but now it is all Indo-Aryan region, Indo-Aryan languages in those regions. So the languages have clearly evolved or been replaced. So this is a good example for it. The language does not stay there forever. So the Dravidian, but Muttasanaya, you might add to this. You have been saying that the Dravidian substrate is there with the Indo-Aryan languages. Can you add more information?
Well, I think the primary argument she makes right through her book, and I think you highlighted it, and of course, when dealing with Maharashtra, Professor Southwood has written a number of papers and also a whole book. In fact, he says Marathi is built on a Dravidian foundation, right? And of course, Peggy Mohan says Bengali is built on Santali, which is the Austroasiatic language foundation. Although they're borrowed, I mean, going back to chapter 1, they're borrowed Indo-Aryan words, Sanskrit words, but they're built on a grammatical structure. Foundation is original, which goes back to ancient times. And in fact, I remember listening to Professor Southwood's seminar, this is about 25 years ago. He said at that talk, this was at U of Penn, maybe 1500 years ago or 2000 years ago, Maharashtra people were speaking a Dravidian language, and an ancient Maharashtrian, which would be much closer to current day Dravidian languages than what it is now. That was his opinion. His scholarship is about, he spent a lot of years in Maharashtra studying the language and also the various cultural features, and he compiled his work into a single volume. Forget the name of the title. I have gone through that book. It's a very in-depth article. He's more a linguist, not a evolutionary person like Peggy is, and so he compares the language Marathi with of course the Brahui as well as classical mainstream Dravidian languages. The question and or comment that I have is, just like how we have tribal Dravidian languages and mainstream Dravidian languages, are there tribal Indo-Aryan languages and mainstream Indo-Aryan languages? And if that were the case, I think there are. Can we then go back 3,000 years in Indus Valley? They would have had a mainstream language and they would have also had tribal languages there, right? Would it, that seems reasonable. That seems reasonable for us to think in those terms. And so they may have elite language and there have been tribal language. The elite people wrote, the tribal people only spoke. Just like how Irulars are in India and of course the Tamil-speaking people in Madurai are. So that gradation might have existed in ancient times as well. That's a possibility, right?
I also recall a Marathi scholar, a native Marathian. He agrees with the idea that Marathi is really built on Dravidian foundation, and that the Marathi people essentially are Dravidians. And this caused quite a stir there, because they always have a struggle with their neighbor, the Kannadigas, who are Dravidians. And the southern Maharashtra people have a lot more Kannada influence than the northern Maharashtra. So whatever traces of Dravidian that you see in Marathi is commonly attributed to the influence of the Kannada speaking people, and the kingdoms, the Satavahanas and other kingdoms, they probably were Kannada speaking as well. So that controversy still goes on, but I was fascinated by the scholar who actually wrote a book, giving a big dictionary comparing the not just Kannada but also Tamil, and compared it with the earliest of Marathi.
There are many cultural features, and I think that's a worthwhile topic to get into. But let's come back to Bama's topic. Are there other questions or comments you may have?
Yeah, I have a question regarding that waves of migration, right? Like they come with the women, or she's one of the video, she says that the first set of people, right, that is 60,000, 70,000, that time they came with women. After that, they came only with men. And in her presentation, she has given the example that like animals and then how we migrate, which makes sense for the later years. But originally, that should have been people would have come together. That's my understanding.
First Indians, they came together. So whatever has happened out of Africa some 1,000 years ago, they all came. That's why they call them as a spread, because the human spread has happened. When there has to be a spread, it has to be both men and women. So the 70,000 years ago, who had all come, they came as families only. It was not made, because it was simply an exploration, and also the genetic evidence is like the mitochondrial DNA of the Indian population. If we see that the woman, yeah, you want to add?
Yeah. I may interject. There's a very important publication that came out in 2017 that actually delves into this at a genetic level, mitochondrial DNA of Indians and the surrounding area. And it draws the conclusion that the migration was mostly men into India. It doesn't get into the divisional, but I'm glad to share. I included a slide in one of my talks. For example, there are about 15 of us here. If I were to take mitochondrial DNA of each one of us, the chances that it is an M is about 35%, that it is an R is about another 35%, at maybe 40%, and that it is a U2, not any U, will be about 10%. And that data, and among these three, the scholars delve in a great detail as to where else are these mitochondrial DNAs found. They find very little evidence of them elsewhere. So the conclusion they draw in that 2017 paper is people who migrated into India were primarily men. And I don't think she doesn't refer to that particular paper, but this is based on genetic evidence.
But is there any timeline for that?
Now, mitochondrial DNA is a relatively small molecule, and we can characterize that from ancient bones. Just like how now this is a problem for the three major labs in India to work on. when you try to identify the Y haplogroup, each cell has only one copy. That is, there's only one molecule. On the other hand, it'll have 50 to 100 mitochondrial DNA, and therefore it's easier to measure. And even though it may be broken up, it's only about 37 kilodalton. It's a small molecule, relatively small molecule compared to a very large molecule for Y chromosome. But they have tried to measure that. I don't know how successful they have been. They're still at early stages in India, in my opinion, the labs in ancient DNA. Whatever they have found so far of current day population, very extensive data has been available. They haven't yet found M1, which is the oldest, which belongs to 65,000 years ago. But M2 has been found in almost every community. A majority of the irregular community has M2, for example, some 60% or so. But you take any caste people, you'll find some of them having M2 or M3 or M10 or M15 or M25, which are descendants of the M haplogroup. Most of the hems are found, the alphabet M is found in India. There are later versions of M that are found in Southeast Asia, but the majority of the early mutations of the haplogroup M are found in India. I'll share the essence of that information through the WhatsApp group, although I had discussed this in my presentation at RMRL as well as about a year ago in the talk in this forum. So that is the general conclusion. Now, there is some evidence there's some genetic support for it, but your question is true. The first set of people who came into India 70,000 years ago, they must have brought their women with them, right? That possibility exists. But the other possibility exists, there were descendants of Neanderthals who existed in India, and they might have mated with them and created the population. But their mitochondrial DNA would not have been M2. And that is why the argument is, it's still possible they exist in India, but we haven't just measured. On an average, every one of us here has 2% of your genes are of Neanderthal genes. Each one of you have at least 200 genes out of 20,000 genes that origin is Neanderthal. That has been shown through large population dynamics, population characteristics. So it's possible they would have mated with some version of Neanderthal. And we all have approximately 1/10 of that in Denisovans, according to the most recent work. So all of us are a blend of the ancient men and the modern men.
Just want to add,
Thank
not
you.
any question, like we have.
I just want to put one input. Even in modern times, the Irla families, they move together. A small, few families together, they move within the forest. With my limited understanding. And also Tolkappiyam mentions the movement within the forest is with families. Yeah, this much.
We have Professor Aravindan joined us. So he is a genetist and he is working for Madras University. Professor Aravindan, can you please talk about your work? Just small introduction. So he is recently added to our group as well. So just wanted to add. He is also looking for the ADNA samples to collaborate with Professor Kumaresan.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, over to you.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, like I had a little bit of difficulty in switching on my mic. So I am Dr. Aravindan, Assistant Professor, Department of Genetics, University of Madras. And I've been very much interested in studying the, overall evolution of human population in India and especially in Tamil Nadu. And sorry, like I had to join late because I had some other commitment. And overall, the narration now is migrations have taken place. People have migrated from several places, and that's how the population has evolved. So my understanding about the Tamilian population specifically is basically it is a mix of 4 different races. And recently, I think Pooja Muchrani, I think she has published a paper. She also highlights this particular thing. Out of the 4 migrations, 3 migrations have been very well characterized. The first migration, which took place from Africa, which is around 70,000 years ago. Of course, the Virumandi story and all those things come under that one. Then the second migration could have taken place from Sumeria, which took place around 50,000 years ago. And with that comes the Dravidian languages and all those things. And the third migration is a steppe pastoralist, which took place around 20,000 years ago. Without comes the Aryan languages and things like that. But prior to all these things, as Dr. Muttarasan, right? So he pointed out the origin of Neanderthal DNA in the Indian subcontinent. That is something which has to be more deeply worked with, because we know Neanderthal are definitely much more ancient than the modern human beings. So there are 2 possibilities. One is, if you look at the spectrum of Neanderthal DNA, you see maximum Neanderthal DNA only in continents, only in countries near Indonesia, Southeast Asia. And then as you go towards Africa, you see the Neanderthal DNA gets reduced more and more. And Africans, as per my understanding is, but if I'm wrong, please correct me, do not have, Neanderthal DNA. So there is one migration which has taken place from Africa, and there could be one migration which could have taken place from Indonesia, which could have been much more ancient. And this first migration, the so-called assuming Indonesian migration, is much more ancient because they were the carriers of this Neanderthal DNA. They could have brought the men and women together. But then, coming to the African migration, Sumerian migration, and Central Asian migration, these 3 migrations, the men alone could have entered. And that is why maybe we are seeing more variation in Y haplogroups compared to a highly restricted and more conserved mitochondrial DNA. As you know, mitochondrial DNA is predominantly maternal inheritance. It comes only from mothers to children, whereas Y chromosome inheritance is purely paternal. It is always from father to son, and it never goes into the female lineage. Okay, so this is my understanding. But and another important thing is there is a recent paper which was published on Neanderthal DNA in the Indian population, where they say even though the Neanderthal can account for 2% of the genome, it is not uniformly distributed. South Indians tend to have more amount of Neanderthal DNA compared to North Indians, and even among South Indians, the socio-economically, the so-called upper caste tend to have lesser Neanderthal DNA, whereas the so-called socio-economically lower caste tend to have more amount of Neanderthal DNA. So, like it is not uniformly distributed, which also gives us a clue. Now, the migrations and the mating is not as random as we thought about. So, some amount of endogamy and exogamy do exist, and that is what gives rise to this unique pattern. So if others have any comments on this one, I'd be very happy to hear from you.
Well, the literature describes as the second wave you described as from Iranian farmers, not Sumerians, because Sumerians are of a different stock altogether. That's what the literature says anyway. The publication that came out in March. And Professor Reich's paper shows the amount of Neanderthal DNA going from some value in Europe down, and it is higher. It's higher in New Guinea area, in Indonesian area, in the eastern Indonesian area, than it is in the Indian subcontinent or in Europe. They have people in New Guinea area have as much as about 6 or 7% of Neanderthal genes, compared to Indians about 2%. And the data that it is higher in South Indians than North, that paper I'm not aware of. If you have access to that paper, please post it to the WhatsApp group. That'll be helpful. I'm referring to Priya's paper that was in, I think, 2018 or 2019, where she published the 2% number.
அதான் பேசிட்டோம்.
Are there other questions or comments?
I just had one comment. In fact, it's more of a curiosity question. The Toba erosion, the Toba explosion, which was about 70,000 years ago, would have severely restricted the movement of, if there were, the movement of the people towards the Indian subcontinent, right? The Indonesian people towards the Indian subcontinent, isn't it?
Yes, it had a huge influence on the movement of people. That is correct. Because it brought the ice age, and therefore you see the migration taking place subsequent to that. In fact, residues of that explosion was discovered in Andhra, right? In one of the
Yeah.
excavations.
Near Karnool, Javalpuram.
The northern hemisphere was very cold, and so the people tended to move south, and India was directly out of Arabian Peninsula. I mean, we are right close, right? So
Yeah.
the part of the reason why, and in fact, this is my guess, if you went back, say, 10,000 years ago, the majority of the world's population was probably in India.
And from what Dr. Navaratna Rajaram also said, I think the Indian subcontinent became very, very conducive for inhabitation around 55,000 years ago because of the cold, it went into the ice age and all of that. It's 55,000 years ago that this happened. This is what I heard. I'm not so sure whether that data point is right, but that's what I have read in Dr. Navaratna Rajaram's paper.
People did meander out north. For example, haplogroup C, M130 is found in Mongolia. So they did go up there, but
Okay.
they did come down south too. So I think humans in those days experimented and they learned how to survive. And so, in fact, Virmandi's genetic cousins are in Japan, in fact. Japan, and there is one tribe there that have some 7 or 8% of their population have haplogroup C M130. So, and in Mongolia too, in the northern region. So they seem to have moved all over. But the critical paper that the first author is Vasant Shinde that reported on rocky gargulating. Sorry, Bama, we are getting away from your main topic. They use the closest genomic availability. They use the IVC Klein, which is more westward, and they used 5 genome, and one of them was J2, another one was L1, if I remember right, and the third one was, I think it might have been H. And of course, there was no R at all. There was one R2, interestingly, yeah, R2. And of course, they compared that as one base, and the other base was Andamanese, which is a haplogroup D3. And they used these 2 genomes to figure out what that lady was about, what she was made about. And they found that she had a significant fraction of the Andamanese genes. And she also had a reasonable proportion of the IVC Klein, which is a combination of L1, J2, and these alphabets may sound strange, but there is a particular explanation for it if I wanted to give, and R2. By the way, we find R2 in almost every population in India, every caste, every creed, every tribe, but we don't know how they came into India. We don't have solid genetic evidence of their trajectory. They came into India a long time ago before the R1 people came. That we know exactly how they came because that has been well mapped out. R1A via Hindu Kush, but R2 seemed to be present in India, in entire India, if you will. That trajectory is unknown. So there is another wave of migrants into India that is yet to be discovered, although we now call about 3 or 4, But I think as time progresses, as more ancient genome data becomes available, we might discover other things.
So there is just few points which I would like to add. So whenever we are talking about the population architecture of India per se and then Tamil Nadu, I think genetics gives one kind of perspective which is very, very important. And it also opens up a Pandora's box because we get to know a lot of things which we never expected. But apart from that, a meaningful conclusion can be obtained only when you get other information sources like history, literature, and things like that. For example, as somebody pointed out, Tolkapiam talks about the migration of a group of people from Gujarat to, Tamil Nadu. And these group of people were brought from along with stage Agastya. And it is mentioned like they were the persons who actually brought Tamil from north to south because he lands up in Podigai and then that's how the Tamil language develops and things like that. Of course, these are Puranic stories which have to be taken with, a pinch of salt, but they can also hint about little bit about, like the migration patterns. And then there is another Puranic story, I don't exactly remember, where they say like this whole land was occupied by a group of people called Viragyas. And then another group of people, maybe the present day Iranian population, not the present Iranians, the ancient Iranian Neolithics, they came from northwest and then a fight takes place and then they captured the land. So that could be the first migration of the Iranian farmers to the subcontinent. So you can take some, like clues from that one. And then if you then paste it with genetics, then it gives a complete story.
A quick correction. This story of migration from Gujarat to Tamil Nadu, the earlier migration, is not in Tolkapiam, but it is in, I think, Purananuru. And that also comes fairly late. And yeah, it could be a myth. We don't know.
Actually, if I remember right, in Purananuru, or that song about Ilango Velir, that is where this comes.
Iringo Velir.
Irunga Velir. And before that also, I will try to share that one. I mean, there is one particular thing in Tolkapiam which also indicates this particular thing. They migrated 3 groups of people together. I'll try to share that one.
Okay, it will be great. We also need to distinguish between Tolkapiam per se and the commentaries that came probably 1,000 years later. So,
and we also must remember that Nachinar Kinnear wrote Urai after nearly 1,500 years. No, 1,800 years after some of the poems were written. And also it was after Bhakti period, which has the influence of all different kinds of things into it. And so myths and mythology becomes history in some aspects and some of his writings, by the way. So we have to be cautious.
And of course,
to interpret some of these poems, you literally have to translate yourself 2,000 years ago for you to interpret Purananuru. If you were to interpret it in the light of today's environment, you're likely to come up with all different kinds of interpretations. And so I would attribute the same to Nachinar Kinnear's Urai, which was written 1,800 years after it was originally written, right? So something to be cautious about.
We also need to be cautious about projection of our desires onto these things. We want to believe that Tamils were the first people and Tamil was the first language and everything originated in Lemuria. Yes, of course, you will find all kind of evidence in all ancient literature, but we need to test that against scientific evidence.
This small input from my side, since Irungo Velir name had cropped up. This Dolavira wall sign is read by me as an order from Irungo, the king of Irungo. And the Dolavira itself could be seen as Tolvirar, a corrupt form as it is known now. The place name Dolavira could be seen as Tolvira. Thank you. This is from my work.
Okay.
Are there other questions or comments?
I have a few questions. Can I?
Yeah, please. We're waiting for you.
Thank you. A couple of questions. The first one is about the possible period of migration or movement from the IVC to the southern region. And Bama was saying that it is not mentioned or something. Is the author silent about that? I don't know. Because the period of movement is very significant, is what I feel. If the migration had taken place during the peak of mature IVC period, then obviously the people who have come here might be the ones like traders and others. Whereas if the migration has taken place after the fall of IVC, probably people who have come here might have been, displaced, dispossessed, and defeated people. That could make a lot of difference. I don't know whether the author has any comments on that, and added to that, whether there are any genetic evidences which may point to the likely period of migration from Indus Valley to southern India. Probably Mutharsan sir probably can throw some light on that. That is one. Second, as far as the route of migration is concerned, in Bama's presentation, I saw, I think it was pointing to the migration through land only, if my observation is right. Probably I have read somewhere the migration was more through the coastal areas. Whether there are any pointers to that, I don't know. That is the second one. Third one, as per the recent research outcomes, the Iron Age, we had Tamil Nadu had entered the Iron Age around 3300 BC. That means more or less we were in Iron Age when they were still in the Chalcolithic age. So we were in a much advanced society. So this kind of a migration, whatever period that could have been, when that had happened, we would have been a much advanced society, and the immigrants from the IVC probably could be relatively backward people. So how do we look at that? These are the three questions I have. Thank you.
Bama, you want to take a crack at it?
So first question is like whether we have any genetic dating of the migration. As far as the genetic results we have, we don't have any dating. We definitely know IVC people have entered south, but when did they move? Did they move after the collapse of IVC or even during the period of IVC? Even the Iranian farmers, when they came all the way to South India. We don't know about that, but we have quite a good composition of their haplogroups, namely the L haplogroups, all over in the south, all over India as well. So we know that they have migrated, but when is not known. The second question is whether it is through the coastal area or not. Peggy is not talking about it, but then to think about your question, probably they would have done it because they have traded along the Moroccan coast to the Mesopotamians as well as the Sumerians, right? And also their boundaries extended all the way to Daimabad, which is the southern Maharashtra or central Maharashtra. So that's a long route. If you see the coastal boundary also, it is a long coastal boundary. But then the coastal people would have the trade communities would have used the coastal route. But whether all of them are trade communities, that is the question we need to ask, because there could be other people, like for example, the metal work craftsmen, they might move through the land, whereas the trade community would have moved over the coast. So there are possibilities that are existing, but I am not aware of any archaeological evidences as well. So that is my thing. And the third question was, yeah, like with our recent iron results, right, dating back to 5,000 years. And IVC population were also very good. And also the Kilanamandi excavations as well as Mailanabare established the trade connections as well. So probably we were contemporary civilizations, and this it's always good one takes the best of the other and makes us yield a better result. So we neither have whether it was a collaborative work or one has defeated the other. I don't think so, because the second one is less probable reason, because we have that Dravidian migration. If we take Balaya's work into account, like there has been so much of memories and so much of skills, so much of uh, cultural habitations, the cultural exchanges that has happened between the IVC folks as well as the South Indian folks. So probably they would have, because they have been an amicable society, they would have used the best of both worlds. That's my answer.
If I may add to Bama, first question, I totally agree with you, and I think that is right on the money. We don't have hard evidence. On the second, two pieces of information, scientific pieces of information might be helpful. One is Professor Southwood's work. What he discovered was the word Palli in Tamil means village, in Old Tamil, but we don't use that particular word. The same word in Kannada and Marathi becomes Halli with H instead of P. So P is pronounced sound. And so Professor Southwood made an assessment of the names of villages in Maharashtra. He found more villages on the coastal with Halli name than on the east. And so he projects the trajectory of people coming from IVC to Tamil Nadu was along the coastal route. So that's an indirect conclusion. Second thing he concludes is the words in Marathi that are very close to Dravidian languages are related to herding animals. And therefore he speculates that the initial people who came from IVC to Tamil Nadu were herders, ஆடு மாடு மேய்க்கிற மனுஷங்கள், not farmers, because herders are mobile nomadic people, while farmers are people who stay in one place. And that leads to your third question. Although iron was found in Tamil Nadu 30 to 100 BC, it doesn't mean it was an advanced civilization. We shouldn't draw that conclusion immediately. That's very important to remember. The reason why people created iron wherever they created, smelted iron, was because that was an evolution from Copper Age to Bronze Age to iron. But in Tamil Nadu, there was no source of copper. They had imported. So they had to invent themselves to figure out some hard material, and therefore they might have gone to iron directly instead of going. There was no copper age in Tamil Nadu, and they went directly to iron age because there was no copper natively. You have to come. It has to come from the northwest. So my speculation, my interpretation is Iron Age is being lowered is because of the available resources, not because they were very advanced. Now, for you to be advanced, you have to establish urbanization. That is the hallmark of a civilization. Urban, the only urban center thus far located is near Kirjadi. That's compared to the Indus Valley, in my opinion, is a miniature scale. So just immediately we cannot jump up and say we had Indus Valley civilization in Kirjadi. There was urbanization, and that is dated only to 600 BC. We don't have yet, maybe we are living on top of it, demonstration of urbanization of contemporary to IVC. Just because we found iron, I don't think we could make that claim at all. I think early that says very inventive people. That's worthwhile attribute. But urbanization is mark of an evolution of a civilization that we must keep in mind. It's possible that urban center is sitting right underneath Madurai, and people are living on top of it, and therefore we'll never discover it. But discovering an isolated urban center is what is needed for you to establish similarity. But we do have settlements. There's no doubt there were settlements that belonging to 2000 BCE, as was described in various different excavations, the most recent being at Chenanur, but not urbanization, right? the general thought is, yeah, at least in terms of scholars, you're initially nomad, hunting and gathering, and then you invent farming, so you settle down. When you have excess surplus of farm, you trade, and therefore you enlarge your settlement and you have a city, you create a city. And of course, that becomes a civilization. You have different trades, etc. And thus far, we have found settlements. You know, there are several hundred IVC settlements, right? There's a beautiful map Kenoers has published going back to 1981, I think, which has hundreds of villages of IVC, which belongs to a very ancient time. But they've been discovered in Maharashtra too. I bet there are similar ones in Tamil Nadu too, as well as in Andhra and Orissa and elsewhere too, because Indian continent was populated 75,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago. So there would have been settlements. People would have been inventive, creating a little, building huts and trying to hunt and gather and then invent farming, right? That is natural, right? So that hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Soren.
But
I have one.
going back on to what you just pointed out, Rajaya. So whether farming was invented in the subcontinent or not is also a controversy, isn't it?
Well, I think the current evidence shows that Mehrgarh was the first a place where settlement were rather farming was invented in the Indian peninsula, if you will, because they have found evidence of cotton cultivation. And in fact, they exported cotton from that area to Mesopotamia. So the scholars say cotton was domesticated in India, that is the Indus Valley civilization. If you're domesticating cotton, the idea of growing meat and wool, etc., did take place. Was it invented independent of what happened in the so-called Fertile Crescent, or it was a simultaneous event? We do not know.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
But there are media that rice was first cultivated in Gangetic Valley is been around. And in fact, there is an article published around maybe 5-6 years ago in Current Science, which is an Indian publication, which claims rice was cultivated in the Gangetic Valley some several thousand years ago. But if you look at the hard data that they publish, what they did not find rice grains, but they found a siliceous organism that is often found in rice fields, and that grows anywhere there is a stagnant water. And if you look at any river where there is stagnant water towards the surface, towards the edge in the bank, the velocity of the water will be low. In such places, you'll find monocots grow up, which is the oldest and the earliest variety of plant, and you'll find grasses growing. If you go, some of them will bear fruit, will bear seeds. You take them out, those are wild rice, if you will, wild grains. And so that would always be present. Well, now the key thing is, how do you take that and cultivate it and produce sufficient amount of them in a given time? So that wild rice was present in Gangetic Valley. There's no doubt about it. But scholars have established genetically the rice that's cultivated in Gangetic Valley now came to us from China via Cambodia, Myanmar into India. And that is established genetically, by the way, not guesswork.
Good. That gives us the clarity.
We have
And that spread elsewhere.
like the Sivakalai one excavations had the rice samples, but they are not as old, like
Oh,
1100.
this is
BC.
another thing. We have a genetist here, I think. Although we have rice that has been taken from Adichanallur, going back to around 1100 BC, we haven't analyzed the genetics of that rice. We haven't analyzed, of course, the genetics of the people also we didn't analyze. So there's a lot yet to be done. if we can apply those some creative skills towards that, we'll understand our own history. For example, if that rice variety is very closely related to the rice variety that is cultivated in South India now, then we could say the trajectory of rice, now knowing where that origin is, maybe that came into South India directly, not just via Northeast, right? Because there are tribes in the Northeast where 70% or 80% of them belong to haplogroup O. Haplogroup O are Chinese haplogroup. You know, Bengalis have small amounts of this genes. You'll notice that they have very different features, right? I mean, facial features, if you will. Slightly high cheekbones, which is common in the Far East. We don't know the exact date of that migration either. We speculate it's about 2000 BC, but it could have been earlier too.
So I just have a small comment pertaining to mixing of race. So I personally feel there are two states in India which have, like in olden days, kind of served as a bowl, okay, yeah, melting bowl of the four races. One is definitely Bengal, the West Bengal and East Bengal put together, because I have spoken to a lot of Bengalis, they also agree. You will always see some Bengalis who have the typical steppe pastoralist phenotype, like tall, fair, and then there are some Bengalis who look exactly like South Indians, okay, little shorter, with a darker hue of skin color and things like that. And then you have the third group of Bengalis who look exactly like, Chinese. So Bengal has been a melting pot of various races. To some extent, Tamil Nadu also, but we do not see so much of variation in Tamil Nadu. So I guess like in olden days, these two states have kind of attracted a lot of people, and then that's where the mixing happened.
Shall we bring the session to a closure because it's almost 2 hours?
Yeah. I think.
Okay.
Is there a question?
No, I have a small comment. Last week, to what Raj Muthurasan sir said, because last week I was in Calcutta for a whole week, photographing Durga Puja. And I actually really had the same idea that he said, going through my mind, because locally the people pray to Kali the whole year through. And she is a dark skinned, really, very, very, what do you call, very rustic, very organic looking, belonging to the area. And then 10 days in a year, they pray to this Mother Durga, who is fair skinned and her eyes are kind of slanted. And she comes riding a lion, and then she is killing a brown or a black skinned guy. So I was thinking that there is a lot of interpretation to this idolatry that I was seeing, and maybe there is culturally a lot that is behind these goddesses that they want to portray, and that makes a lot of sense when they say that there are 3 or 4 races that are being mixed in that area. So it'll be interesting to figure that out. So, but great discussion this evening, and it was very, very interesting listening to everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
Mani?
thank you. Yeah, she already started to thank, and I appreciate that. Thanks to Dr. Bama Muthuramalingam, the speaker, who reviewed the chapter 6, the Dravidian Dream Time. Because we are familiar with the languages, this presentation was a little bit more accessible to a large number of people, I think. And it also drew, I think, almost 18 people at the peak. And thanks to Ranjit and Roja Muthaya Research Library for their technical assistance for live streaming to YouTube. Thanks to the participants of this series, and especially today's topic, for a very lively discussion. The next week's topic is chapter 7. I think it is pronounced Chimera on the Northern Rim. Speaker is Wahisan. We'll see you all then. Until then, have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Good night all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.